when I graduated high school, he sent me on a vision quest with the shaman, and I went to the mountains of New Mexico, and we did a combination of MDMA and psilocybin, and I'd never done anything before. I'm 18 years old, totally panicked. Like I remember I grabbed a rock from that I found, like a really smooth river stone, and I was like, as long as I hold this rock and rub it tight, I'll know that I still exist. I feel my body evaporate, and the only word that I could use for what remained was my soul. And I was like, oh man, like I got to rethink some shit, because there's something to this God thing. There's something to this soul thing. Yes, it's not that, religion hasn't twisted things in gnarly ways. Of course, I still believe that, but also I see the kernels of truth and wisdom, and there's so much beauty in there. And so I just went on this experiential path of like, I'm going to figure this out.
Hey guys, it's Mike. Welcome back to the Best Medicine Podcast. Today's guest is one of my favorite interviews to date. His name is Aubrey Marcus. Aubrey has an impressive resume, but is probably most well known for co-founding the supplement brand Onnit, along with Joe Rogan. Aubrey has a massive podcast. He's a New York Times bestselling author and is incredibly passionate about raising awareness in the psychedelic medicine space. In fact, we jump right into the episode by talking about his first experience with psychedelics at 18 years old that changed his life forever. It's pretty wild. He also created a fascinating documentary about spending an entire week in nothing but darkness. Yeah, you heard that right. Absolutely nothing but darkness. You don't want to miss this show, and make sure to follow us at the Best Med Podcast and at MySoulCBD, and enjoy the show. We're calling the podcast The Best Medicine. Mm-hmm. And we'll obviously ask you that later. Might even lead off with it.
No, I actually want to kick off with it.
But it's cool. We've had a lot of health and wellness people. We've had some athletes, some entrepreneurs. Just trying to get around really cool people that have like inspiring stories. And obviously, your name came up with all the cool shit you've done. And apparently, you've done drugs once or twice, and we want to talk about that.
Medicine.
Yeah, the medicine.
The best drugs is like the underground version of your show.
Yeah. But the best drugs. That's our other episode.
Right. That's the spin-off season 2. But I think that's a great place to start, actually, being someone who's been so immersed in, I saw Fit for Service. I have some buddies that are involved in that, and all these cool things you're doing. I want to ask you, what do you feel like for your life is the best medicine?
It's an impossible question to answer, actually, because it depends on the outcome that you're looking to achieve, and also the state that you're looking to transform, or or the condition that you're looking to remediate. So you really can't say that without the specifics, and also the specifics of the individual, right?
Yeah.
Like for some people, it could be ayahuasca, iboga, some of these big, massive psychedelic journeys, but for other people, maybe not ever in their life. And then, so for the best medicine universally, I think you have to start talking about things like breath work, or things like ecstatic dance, or things just like creating a richly charged erotic container in your union with your partner or partners, right? Like things that I think are universally applicable as powerful medicines, cold plunging, stuff that I think there's like a whole category of like, yeah, are you a human? Do this. You know what I mean? Like if you're a human, breathing, dancing, having good sex, like being in good community, testing yourself in the ice, fasting, those are kind of like universals. And then the specifics, that's where it gets real interesting, depending on the individual, depending on what they're looking to achieve. So for me, it really varies. And it's almost like asking Gandalf what his favorite spells are. He's like, I don't fucking know. Are there orcs? Like, what are we dealing with here? Like, am I at the Shire? Should I make a dragon firework, or like, do I need to slay some beasts? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
What about right now, though? Because I remember when we were at your house, we were at dinner.
We gotta get an answer out of him.
I gotta know.
He's basically like, your show title is trash, but okay. We'll edit that out.
No, it's just my little dick intellectuality talking right here.
I'm fucking with you.
No, you're like one of the most interesting people ever. Do you feel like you're interesting? Because you've done crazy, wild, interesting shit. Do you feel like you're interesting?
I'm not going to be false humble.
Okay,
I'm
good.
interesting as fuck.
I want to know if
sure.
you think you're interesting. So, because when we were at dinner at your house with a group of people, you asked everybody, what is your favorite medicine right now? So I think that was cool because everybody gave a different response, whether it was some sort of psychedelic or sex or dancing, or it was something interesting that was relevant for them right now. So right now, what are you like super into?
That's actually an easy answer. And with all of that rigmarole that I shared, for me right now, the combination, I actually shared this beforehand when we were even starting, the combination of ketamine and cannabis, which to me has been the most transformative, revolutionary, evolutionary medicine path that I've ever undertaken. And it's surprising. I mean, both of those substances are legal in most states. Ketamine's legal in all 50. And cannabis is rapidly approaching that. I mean, I think we're getting at the tipping point where you're going to be able to get cannabis everywhere. And people are really not savvy to what happens when those two things are combined. Because people talk about stacking supplements and stacking drugs. And you think about stacking as like an additive thing, but not actually as the recombination creating something new. And you really have to think of this, if you were going to come from a chemistry perspective, of some chemical reaction that's actually creating a different substance. Now, of course, that's not happening actually, but that's what it feels like somatically, psychically. It feels like you're interacting with something radically different than the properties of either one of those independently. And what you experience is the full somatic intelligence of the body, which the cannabis awakens, with the entire expansiveness of the void that contains all possibility that ketamine opens you to. And so when those two things meet, it's like your body's intelligence has direct access to the all. And it's really indescribable how powerful that experience is. And it's my fucking jam, because I leave that experience not only expanded, not only with download. I mean, I have like a running diary of like 45 pages of notes and, just downloads that have come from these different journeys. But not only that, but you leave it more energized and recharged than when you entered it. Because even a mushroom journey or something like that, it's energetically taxing. It can be incredibly, I love all these other medicines, but this one actually, I feel more recharged, more rested when I finish. So it's the jam for me.
Wow.
What?
I'm going to try it now.
Yes. Sold her.
Today, right now.
Bust it out. We got some over here. Let's get weird.
How do you integrate back in, though? Because you're so grounded. Because a lot of woo-woo spiritual people, it's like, they're not here. They're not here anymore.
Sure.
They're just like, you're like, where are you? How do you integrate back into life when you've left the matrix, let's say, so much? Is it hard to?
I think there's a kind of misunderstanding about correlation and causality. I think ungrounded woo-woo people gravitate towards certain psychedelics, and then you correlate that with, oh yeah, these psychedelics must be making you woo-woo and ungrounded. And you're like, nah, actually that's how they were always. Oh. I really think that's a big part of it. Now, certainly it can exacerbate it. I've certainly seen medicines create a sense of like mania and inflation and a variety of different things, and also fantastical delusional thinking where it's like, I'm going to be a rock star. Well, how long are you practicing your guitar? Oh, not much. I'm like, I don't care what acid told you, but that's not how it fucking works, So, so I think part of it is just my innate nature. Part of it is also my life, like, playing ball, like doing the things and having the friends and having that kind of physicality grounded in my life in a really, and just dealing with real life shit all the time. It does keep you in both worlds firmly, so I can traverse the other worlds and also navigate, kind of the regular 3D reality.
Was there a moment for you in your life that you really started diving into this plant medicine? Like, so often the underlying thing that we're hearing is a lot of plant medicine is helping with trauma, for instance, or that's a reason people get drawn to it. Was there, what in your life kind of made you gravitate towards this and literally kind of go all in?
I was lucky. So my father had a lot of trauma, and he was trying to find solutions and thinking outside the box. So he started working with one of the legends in the field, Dr. Stan Groff. and he was doing the holotropic breathing. And Stan was also pretty immersed in the Esalen psychedelic medicine culture way back from the 60s through the 80s. So in the 80s, my dad was already working and doing psychedelic medicine. So I grew up, and my dad was like one of the first donors to MAPS. And now obviously MAPS is finally coming to fruition. But from the 80s, my dad was, involved with Rick Doblin. And so a big like kind of lineage. So when I graduated high school, he sent me on, I wanted to do it too, but he sent me on a vision quest with the shaman that came from that whole crew. And I went to the mountains of New Mexico, and we did a combination of MDMA and psilocybin. And I'd never done anything before. I'm 18 years old. Totally panicked. Like I remember I grabbed a rock from that I found, like a really smooth river stone. And I was like, as long as I hold this rock and rub it tight, I'll know that I still exist.
Wow.
And fucking terrified.
That's young to start this stuff.
I mean, it's rite of passage shit.
Your dad was
it's
pretty
an
cool.
initiation.
He was pretty open-minded.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway from that event, or like it
changed my whole life? I mean, so up until that point, I was a pretty angry atheist at that point, because I moved from California, and my family didn't grow up practicing any religion. Moved from California to Texas, and I encountered a lot of religion when I moved to Texas, and I was like, whoa, this is weird. And I saw how like guilty people were about things that I was like, why are you so guilty about masturbating? Like, this is fucking normal. This is what do you mean?
I just did in your bathroom earlier.
Right? It's my picture in there. It's hard.
Aubrey's
It gets
bathroom
people,
has a
right?
big picture of himself just there, and I just felt in the moment, and I was like, you know what?
Well,
let me let the nerves out.
You're only human.
Show.
You're only human.
Thank you for actually the toilet helped.
the toilet, a fleshlight comes out of the toilet if you press the right button.
For context, he has the most high-tech toilet I've ever seen in my life.
I wish I was a dude sometimes.
Yeah. No, it was great for me. I want to thank you and the toilet.
Yeah, for sure.
From 2032.
So
I'm going to be a dude in my next life.
Angry atheist from that, but that didn't really tip me over the scales. I was just like, this is, and then I got honey dicked into a ski trip that I thought was a ski trip. But it was really like a Bible study. It was like a Bible study ski trip.
Yeah.
And the preacher guy was trying to tell me how everybody who hasn't accepted Jesus in their life was going to hell. And I was like, that makes no sense. What about the people who never heard about him? He's like, well, too bad for them. I'm like, what? I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
You need to interview this guy.
Too bad for them? Yeah. Like eternal damnation and fire because nobody told you?
Sucks
like,
to suck.
That.
Oh,
that's actually were his words.
Yeah. Like, tough shit.
That's crazy.
I was like, this is bullshit. And so that made me mad. And then, but what really did it is then I went to Italy on just a family trip. And we were cruising around Italy. We got a van that didn't fit in some of the roads. It was a funny trip, but we went to the dungeons of the Inquisition in one of the small kind of mountain towns out there. And they actually had preserved like all of the torture devices of the Inquisition. And of course, the Inquisition is the Spanish and Italians and getting together and just deciding you're a heretic, you're somebody, and would just torture them in the most heinous ways. And at least 80% of the torture devices involved people's genitalia. And I was like, this is fucked up. Like, this is the darkest thing I've ever seen in my life. And so it kind of set me on this path where I was like crusading. I was reading Christopher Hitchens and God Is Not Great and be like, I'm fucking taking this out. That was my mission. So anyways, that's my framework. No spirituality and super anti-religion. I go in, I do the psilocybin and the MDMA. I feel my body evaporate, and the only word that I could use for what remained was my soul. And I was like, oh, man, like I got to rethink some shit, because there's something to this God thing. There's something to this soul thing that I feel, that I know to be true. And so, yes, it's not that, religion hasn't twisted things in gnarly ways. Of course, I still believe that, but also I see the kernels of truth and wisdom, and subsequently now like really appreciated the wisdom of Yeshua and all of the mystical Kabbalist teachings. And there's so much beauty in there. And obviously institutions has corrupted it and evil has been done. I'm not denying that anymore, but it completely changed the trajectory of my life, where I decided, well, I don't hear anybody talking about exactly what I experienced. because again, that's kind of mostly pre-internet. Internet was like just kind of forming, and podcast didn't exist. So I didn't know. Like I wasn't turned on to Ram Dass, who was talking about it. Like I didn't get it. And so I just went on this experiential path of like, I'm going to figure this out. Like I'm going to figure out by continuing to find what I feel and then talking about what I feel and what I understand to be true based on my own experience. So that was it. That was, probably the most significant turning point in my life.
Is your dad still alive?
He is. Yeah, he is.
Does he do any stuff with you?
It's kind of it's kind of a sad story, actually. I mean, he was on the medicine path for a while, and it was, as I said, he had a lot of trauma, he had a lot of demons, and it was really helping him, and he was really managing a lot of the the symptoms that he was experiencing from that. He left the medicine path and went on to a different path where he was actually trying to practice channeling, which is not advisable unless you're like really at a high level and have a lot of like wherewithal about this. And I understand this now. And he was a very persistent man. And eventually that kind of unraveled his grip on reality because he started hearing voices, and the voices were not the voices of an angel. They were, different types of voices. So he's still, he's kind of isolated himself, and we reach out to him and try to build the bridges, and been institutionalized a few times, and so yeah, unfortunately, me and my dad haven't got to share in this whole chapter of kind of my flowering into becoming who I am. But I have so much love for him, and so much gratitude.
Yeah, that's probably taught you a lot about just allowing him to be where he's at right now.
Yeah,
and you can't control that.
For sure. And for a while I was really angry because I blamed him for it, and then through the years I've just made greater and greater peace, and it's just been more and more love and gratitude that's come through. Because the truth is, yeah, we had our shit. He was, he did his best not to pass on the trauma that he'd experienced, but of course a little bit comes through, a little bit of anger and rage here and there, a little bit of I love you more when you score 30 than when you score 3. The typical dad shit where it's like, stuff that you have to work on where you're only as good as your performance on the court or your performance on the scorecard and little shit like that. But for the most part, like we had a great relationship for 30 years. He was one of my best friends, and I could always count on him to figure things out together. No matter what it was, we would sit down and, just share logic and figure things out. So to say, to be anything but grateful to have 30 years with a great father, like not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, that's a great mindset to have.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as you said that, if you've ever had the thought that possibly him doing so much plant medicine changed his neurochemistry and could have been a reason for his kind of mental decline, I guess.
Yeah. The thing is that he'd already, been institutionalized before the medicine path.
Oh,
while
okay.
he was so he went to the medicine path to help correct it. And while he was on the path, he was continually getting better. It's when he stopped and then went into this other path. And then after 5 years, he regressed to where he was before and then accelerated that. So, certainly I've had to grapple with that fear, right? Because, I'm someone who pushes the envelope when it comes to psychedelic medicine, and I've had to face, am I actually going to push myself too far? And I've had to go through that fear to the other side and find a deeper faith and a deeper trust, because of course that fear is there. But in my deep knowing, I know that actually it was the inverse, that actually the medicine was helping him regulate his mind. And when he stopped was when the old conditions kind of started to come back.
What are you afraid of? I feel like you're not afraid of anything. Is this true? When I think of you, I'm like, he's probably not afraid of shit.
We drop like a fake spider.
Well, I don't know if you've lived in the dark, you've done all these psychedelics, you've experienced you tried out polyamory and shared that publicly. It's like you've gone to the edges of all of these different things. So at the end of the day, I'm like, what is he even afraid of? Because you've been so brave to do all this shit. I'm like, what is he afraid of?
I appreciate that. But there's I still don't like when there's a bug on me. Like I
thought you were going to say death.
I don't
He's
like it.
A spider.
I mean, a spider is like the same to me as a cricket. I just don't really. I'm like, get off of me. I work on that, and sometimes I'll like grab a cockroach in my hand as like a Spartan test of like, don't be a fucking coward. Pick this thing up with your hand, and when it tries to squirm through this little part of your hand and it's using all of its little feet and trying to wiggle its way through, don't freak out and scream. Yes, I do that. But it requires like maximum effort, and I do it so that I can like test myself.
Yeah.
So it's not like I'm like I have this perfect consciousness that doesn't even find things squeamish or get disgusted by things. Disgust is another kind of fear response. But when it comes to like a real fear, I think the real fear is that I'm going to let the world down. I'm not going to live up to my potential. I'm not going to be able to serve the people I love in the best way that I could serve them. And as my heart opens more, I love the world in its entirety more. And so the fear is like, what if I don't do it right? What if I fuck up? Because I know I really have a sense that I can do some powerful things in this world. And of course, I think a lot of people would say I already have, and I acknowledge that, but maybe it's just my belief in myself, or maybe it's a kind of a knowing, but I feel like I'm just getting started.
So what, that makes me think right away of, curious of what you believe happens when you die, because that statement makes me feel like you think there's only one lifetime, like you've got one shot at this, which I have the same fears, obviously, but you know what I'm saying?
Well, no, I'm personally absolutely confident that I know what happens when I die, because I feel like I've seen it. I've been there. I've experienced traversing beyond this dimensional, and it wasn't through an NDE. It was through, actually, it wasn't even a medicine experience. It was a very strange kind of samadhi that I experienced at, one night, late at night, where my soul just left my body completely and went into the quantum, the non-physical quantum. And in that space, it was wild, because you think of things spatially, but if there's no physical dimension, there's no space. So you don't move, right? Like, so all these ideas of heaven, like you're cruising through, what are you talking about? You don't move. You can't move unless there's space and unless there's time. So what it is your consciousness is able to call forward and interact, or almost like make appear before you, interact with other souls, other places, other things. So you're like in this, it's just pure consciousness interacting with a field of other consciousness, which could be other beings, or it could be other people as their soul self, or it could be seeing places or things if you wanted to see them, but you're not like swimming around or anything. And it was a deep gnosis, like, oh, this is where you go when you die. And it was beautiful. It was blissful. I could see it being like a tad boring after a while, potentially, but you still get all the conversations.
There's no time.
I mean, it's awesome. I know, but which means it's also forever.
But what is forever if there's no time?
It's infinity and an instant at the same time that you're there. And this is talking to
shit, this is crazy.
This is talking to like some of the deep kind of wisdom keepers like Matthias DiStefano, and really understanding that when you pass, because you're beyond time, you're there for both infinity and an instant before you reincarnate, which is a complete mind fuck.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, having a body is the shit. Like fundamentally, having a body is the shit. Like this is the game, because we actually have access to our consciousness, but we get smell and taste and touch, and we can go see cool places, and we have all of these emotions and things. So it really makes me appreciate this life. I also could feel that there was a second death. The second death, and it was this kind of like awareness that I could let go of my own unique perspective, because even in the non-physical dimension, I still maintained a perspective. I was still me.
Oh, you had ego. You had self.
Self. Yeah. It was ego, I think, is very linked to the personality structures, and also, which is also very linked to the body, and also very linked to it was definitely beyond ego, but still had some similar qualities. I would call it your unique self, basically your unique perspective, your soul self. I think there's one way you can describe true self, which is an absolute merger with the field. But that's what I call the second death. And the second death was that I could give up my perspective and become a perspectival, meaning that all I am is the force of life itself, but without any identity. Wow. And that is like letting go of everything. And I wanted no parts of that.
When did this happen for you?
This happened in 2017.
Okay.
So you're not afraid to die?
No, I mean, it'd be a shame.
Yeah.
Like, it would be a shame. I mean, I really love my wife, and I have some dope friends, and, like, I don't want to go.
Yeah. You like
It's
basketball?
awesome.
I mean, I don't know
I
if
do.
there's
I love
basketball
to
in heaven or wherever, wherever this place is.
There's no hoop. There's
but you're
no
not afraid of
ballers.
it, which is really powerful because that's what I think allows you to do these courageous things, because you're like, let's go. I'll do it, because you're not afraid of what could potentially happen. So that's powerful.
Yeah, it's huge, and I think it's a necessary first step to really being as courageous as you can be, is to at least significantly mitigate your fear of death. And the thing that really, the medicine that again, talking about best medicines, the medicine that consistently will help you get over your fear of death is ayahuasca. They call it the vine of death or the vine of the soul. And my first ayahuasca journey was absolutely all about that. I mean, I drink ayahuasca, and ayahuasca is a brew that's indigenous to Central and South American cultures. There's three main traditions in Peru: Mestizo, Quechua, and Shipibo. I was with a Quechua healer named Maestro Orlando Chuandama. I actually just released a podcast called The Dragon of the Jungle about my experience with him. But he doesn't speak any English. We're in the middle of the jungle around a hut. Actually, when we left the hut, there was fresh jaguar tracks outside of the hut. Like, we're in the deep jungle. And I drink the brew, and I'd done a fair bit of psychedelics, but never ayahuasca at that point. And it's a combination of, a DMT, which comes from the chacruna leaf or the Wambisa opiahe leaf, and the ayahuasca vine itself, which acts as kind of like an MAOI inhibitor, which allows the DMT, which is a psychoactive, to become orally active. Very strong experience. And my vision state, I had spiders crawling in my eyes and ears and laying eggs and literally exploding out of every orifice of my face and body, like my nose, my eyes, my ears, just exploding out, spiders coming out. And I was like, that's pretty horrid. But I wasn't that phased. And then I had eels that were in this kind of like burrowing, like in this spiral way, and they would like burrow with their teeth, and they burrow into my organs, and then they would start eating my organs and then bursting out of my stomach. So the eels came and like burst out of my stomach. It's like, that was pretty horrid. But I knew enough about psychedelic journeys to like just witness and watch, and you even kind of like your consciousness squints, even though your eyes are closed. You're like, oh God. Like, that's rough, but you just keep looking. You don't try to change it. Don't try to change the channel, otherwise it just gets worse. And then it got worse. Then I was sliding down this vine of thorns like Jack and the Beanstalk, but I was naked and I was sliding down it like a fireman pole. So all the thorns were like ripping me up from the genitals first, and like completely eviscerating me from my taint upwards. And I was like, the imagination to do that is fucking impressive. Still was not too phased. And then I was like, oh, not phased by that? Well, that's cool, because you have cancer and you're going to die. And my uncle just had cancer and just died from cancer. So it was a fear that I had because I watched him suffer and wither and get smaller. And, he was just a badass tennis coach who's, first one to teach me how to shoot a gun, and, it was amazing. Like, I really, really loved my Uncle Craig, and I watched lymphoma take him out. And so I had that fear. And so for about 2 hours, I wrestled with ayahuasca, it continually telling me that I had lymphoma and I was going to die. And then finally I just couldn't argue with it anymore. And I'm checking my glands, and I'm like trying to figure shit out. And I was like, okay, if it's my time, it's my time. Like, I accept. And then ayahuasca's like, just kidding, you're healthy. And it felt like Awa reached up, like that scene from Avatar where all the fibers come up from the ground and just like hold you. And I just could feel Mother Earth just like holding me in her cradle. And it like, that really broke for the first time, like broke my fear of death.
Holy shit. I wouldn't do well with that. That's crazy.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Mike. I'm popping in here to tell you about my absolute favorite soul product, our Alert Focus Caps. If you're dealing with any morning fatigue, brain fog, or just relying on coffee throughout the day to get you by, I got you. This is a doctor-formulated product that's been proven to increase focus, energy, and concentration with our proprietary blend of a handful of adaptogens, nootropics, and plant extracts. Some of the ingredients we use are lion's mane, mushrooms with neuroprotective effects that reduce brain fog and improve memory. We've got B12 in there, a brain-boosting vitamin that can improve mental clarity, increase energy, and boost mood. We've got all-natural caffeine from green tea extract with CBD to stop any jitters. And finally, one of my favorites, we've got a phenomenal blend of cordyceps in there. This is a powerhouse mushroom that's gaining popularity day over day because it increases oxygen uptake in the brain and increases blood flow to the brain, which will help you fight mental fatigue. You're going to feel alert and dialed in without the jitters, I promise you. You got to go try this out. And exclusive to our Best Medicine podcast listeners, we're offering a 20% off code on Alert and all Soul products. So just use code TBM and make sure to let us know what you think. We've got over 6,000 five-star reviews now, and I'm so proud, and I stand by the quality and efficacy of our products. So go use code TBM at mysoulcbd.com and enjoy.
What about when you were in the dark? How long were you in the dark again?
6 days.
6 days. Did it feel like eternity?
Yeah, tell us about the documentary process, and then did you actually sneak an iPhone in there to watch Netflix? You can tell us. We'll cut it out.
I would 100% sneak my phone in. Not having that sense is so trippy, but that's obviously what the challenge of it.
Well, so it's not just dark. It's absolute black. So absolute black, like not a pinprick of light.
Where do you do this?
I did it in Germany. So it was in the Black Forest of Germany.
Schwarzwald.
Yeah. It was Schachbenwalden.
All right.
Germany.
Like you're in a house there?
I was in a house.
It must be a specially made house.
Specially engineered house.
Okay,
yeah. So they basically create like double blackout inside and outside on all the windows and all the doors, and like double corridors, so that if one door opens and you open the other door, there's still never any light. Because if you experience any light, it actually messes with kind of one of the features of it, which is you'll start producing you'll have an endogenous DMT release, so you'll start having visions in the black, which is particularly intense because once the visions start, they don't stop. So, anyways, absolute black, absolute black. They would bring food outside of my door, and then they would ring a little bell, and then they would close the other door, and then so I would go get my food in the black.
Crawl over?
Just feeling around, and I put my food in. Put my hand in so many avocados I can't even imagine.
You're like, what is this?
Yeah, I was like, fucking avocado again. Why do I keep doing this?
You wouldn't
it's like
know
when I order Postmates, I'm a hungover. I'm just like,
exactly.
So you sat in a room all day, and you would like crawl and go get food.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But what was the motivation to even do this, Aubrey? I'm curious. No, I mean that sincerely.
I was struggling, to be honest. So this was at the tail end of 7 years of polyamory, and you referenced that. It was a beautiful experience, and I'm super grateful for it. And all my primary partner, Whitney, and all the lovers that I shared during that time. I mean, absolutely magical, but absolutely like eviscerating, like so difficult and so painful. And I think just carrying all of that, I needed to step away from everything. And the regular medicine journeys weren't actually sufficient. I needed something more extreme and more like, I don't know. I felt really called to it. So that was one of the reasons. And it was more just like my intuition knew that that's what I needed at the time. And I did get a lot of healing from a lot of the, polyamory, and a lot of like the re-understanding of how to show up in love and how to heal. And but you face all of the things that you'd suppressed, anything that because we distract ourselves all the time. Even grabbing a different drink or thinking, there's a million ways, listening to some music, watching something on TV, talking to a friend, looking around outside, even just changing what you look at. will change the way that you think about things. But in there, you have no options because it's absolute silence, absolute black, absolute isolation. So it's just you and your thoughts.
What's your concept of time during that?
Yeah. So in an ideal situation, there would be no sounds that came through, so you would really completely lose track of time. There were roosters in a farm nearby.
Oh.
So that was nice.
Mornings.
That was nice, actually. So I knew when the morning was, and they mixed up the times where they served us food, but the family still wanted to go to sleep, so they never served me food at like 3 a.m. So dinners, it was within like always a 5-hour window of somewhere in the evening. So there was some regular cadence, but you are in a very much in the timeless void, to a large degree.
And then when it's over, they come in and they're like, "Hi, we're about to."
Are you ready? Are you ready to see the light?
Really?
In their German accent. I have a bad German accent, but are you ready to go to the light?
You almost like at that point, 6 days, it would almost be, you have to be gentle, like bringing light back in, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because your eyes would be like, whoa.
Oh, yeah. It took a long while for the eyes to adjust. But after 6 days and having gone through everything, and I'll tell you, just the general arc was the first 2 days I spent trying to solve all my internal problems with external solutions. I was going to move, sell my company, change everything, do a million different things, change all my relationships, all that. That was my first 2 days. And then by day 3, I was like, oh man, actually my life is perfect. I just need to fix all this stuff internally and really like learn to appreciate my life as it is. So that was a big part of the arc of the journey. But you don't realize how much we take for granted. We take everything for granted, really. It's just human nature. Mm-hmm. But when you don't have sight and you don't have sound and you don't have anybody to talk to, like when you get those things back, it's overwhelming. In my documentary, which is, I have it on my website now, aubreymarcus.com, called Awake in the Darkness. When I take my blindfold off, it's one of the most emotional moments of my life because I saw this, like, it was at sunset, so the light was not too bright, but I just saw this like idyllic, pastoral scene out there where Germany was looking over and across the way was France. And it was just like to see again and to realize that for my whole life, I've taken for granted the fact that I can see. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing again and realizing how special it is and how lucky I am.
That gives me chills.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Gave you perspective.
It messed up your melatonin, though, I bet, a little bit, right?
Oh,
Look at me. The biohacker in me is like, hold on.
For sure.
You didn't see natural light. Your circadian rhythm was probably like, where?
Fucked.
What the fuck?
Andrew Huberman.
So you sleep.
Andrew Huberman would be pissed.
You sleep a lot for the first 2 days because your body releases a ton of melatonin.
Okay.
And then they believe that part of what actually creates the endogenous DMT release is the flood of melatonin and actually becoming, like through some biochemical processes, actually becoming either, an MAOI that actually makes the normal endogenous DMT active or some kind of DMT. They haven't studied it sufficiently. But I've talked about it on a podcast about DMT. And so when that starts happening though, you're in a constant vision state, at least for me. And this doesn't happen for everybody. It depends on people's own, just like people can drink ayahuasca and not see anything. I drink ayahuasca and I see lots of things. So it happened for me really strongly, but it was almost like there was flashing, pulsing lights at first. And then from there, it was just full fractals everywhere in my field of vision.
What do you mean fractals?
So fractals are this kind of geometric patterns that appear when you're on a lot of different types of psychedelics. It's one of the commonalities where you see sacred geometry of like flower of life type of patterns, really geometric looking patterns that are just kind of everywhere. And it looks like if you looked even deeper into the one geometric pattern, you'd see another copy of that same geometric pattern, even smaller, making that copy. And it's almost like you get to see the building blocks of reality itself, which is all geometry, frequency, structure. And so my whole field of vision was lit up, like it was bright and pulsing. And so like sleeping was brutal. I had my Oura ring on. It was before the Oura rings had little lights on them. They have little lights on them now. Yeah. It's like the old school version. And first few nights sleeping like 10 hours. And then after that, it was like 7, 5, 3.
Wow,
like
your body
very little.
Really...
Yeah.
Wow,
So
that's
I was
the first
tired
thing I
when
thought
came
of
out.
is your melatonin levels and your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
It's so interesting about the DMT and that the body and brain will naturally produce it. I've actually seen some things that we think that DMT is naturally produced either right before death or near-death experiences, right? Do you think that's a way of the body kind of easing us into death in a sense, or have you ever thought about that?
What the current research from a scientist named John Dean and John Chavez has really uncovered, and we did a podcast with them, and they have a series called DMT Quest, is that actually there's plenty of endogenous DMT that's constantly existing in our cerebrospinal fluid and actually gets activated during breath work. So they have Wim Hof in the documentary. And so when you're doing like activated breath work, you release more DMT, which also creates your kind of altered state of consciousness along with the hyperoxygenation. So it was used to believe that we just released this spurt when we died. We still may release some kind of spurt from the pineal or something like that. But there is a constant level of DMT in the cerebral spinal fluid. It just doesn't survive very long. You have to test in a very specific way and quickly, because it doesn't keep basically long enough. Like you can't pull it out and then test it like a few days later or something like that. Like you have to, it degrades really quickly. But the theory is that it's actually DMT which helps us make sense of our default reality. Because like this table here, it's a table, but it's actually, if we really saw what it was, it's like, it is geometry. It's atoms linked up together and, into molecules, into compounds, shaped into a piece of wood, that all is. So like reality is real, but it's also our version that helps us navigate, based upon what laws make the most sense for us. So I think DMT helps us actually make sense of not only this reality, but also can make sense of the other realities.
Shit. So after doing all of these psychedelics, what do you believe is our creator? What do you refer to it as God? Obviously, after doing all of this, I assume you have had some sort of download or clarity around what you think it is. What is going on? Like who?
Well, it's not a matter of think. I know.
Yeah. What it?
Like I know God.
Like what would you say now to the atheists?
I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry you believe that. Honestly, I was there too, and I can't convince you, nor should anybody try to convince you to believe in something. It's meant to be felt. It's meant to be known. Yeah. It's not meant to be believed. It's meant to be known. And there's ways for you to know God. And if you're interested, I can point the direction, but be mindful it's not a path for everyone, to know that. And to understand it it's not like you can see it, not like you can see God. You have to feel with every sense simultaneously what God is. Mm-hmm. And it's hard because there's many faces of God. There's many ways in which you can interpret and understand. And so to actually, I've thought about kind of trying to create a pantheon of the different faces of the divine. But it's really best described as the source of everything, the source of all light, the source of all creation, the source of all power, the source of all love, the source of all, and all the darkness as well, all the pain, all the delusion, all of the everything. And then it starts to get interesting when you start to split off the light and the dark. Then you get Jesus and Satan, but both are God, right? So it's like there's one that starts to split, and you start to make categories: good, bad, Jesus, Satan. Well, you can call Jesus God, but certainly it's all the good parts, good quotes. But like when you actually experience God, it's everything, and it's an overwhelming ecstasy, but it's homogeneity, right? Like it's not that. That's why the absurdity of God was angry. What? How are you angry? If you're angry, you're not God because you're everything, right? Like really, when you experience it. So it's beyond duality, it's unicity, and it's ecstatic, you know, and you call that, when you merge with that field, you call it apotheosis. But there's many different layers. You can call them seraphim or archangels, or, you know, planets, or the sun, or whatever, or emanations like light, or all light, all sound, all color. There's different ways to describe it, but it's ultimately like the source head.
Holy shit.
So
that's amazing. I think it is hard to put into words. I can imagine.
Of course. Well, there's one great word. It's called God, but everybody's used it to mean a billion things. So it's actually the worst word to use.
Well, I think people assume it's like some guy with a
beard. Yeah,
because
it evokes a bunch of different understandings, which aren't true.
A feeling or an energy, or it's hard to articulate what it is.
Because it's all of it.
Yeah.
It's literally all of it.
Is everything.
It's like, is that God? Yes. Whatever you're asking, is that God? Yes. Yes.
Do you think everything's planned out then, in a sense? Almost like, I guess this is the conversation around free will, but people who are successful, right? You built Onnit, you've had a lot of success. Do you think that was God plus you showing up to appreciate God and work hard? Or do you think certain people are, right? It's like, how much of it is planned out?
So we are actually the individual manifestations of God. So we are God too. We are participating in the divine. And to the extent under which we're participating in the divine is the extent that we have free will, because God, of course, has free will.
It's like co-creation?
This is co-creation. And we, the more that we participate in our divinity, the more choice that we have accessible. But free will is always a sliding scale. We have more than some neuroscientists might think, and less than probably the common person thinks, because we're actually driven by, you know, a lot of patterning, conditioning, you know, just forces that are actually beyond our control. But absolutely we have free will. And this isn't a movie. It's more like a video game. You know, like there's some rules, but, you know, we have a lot more agency than I think we give ourselves credit.
I like that, a video game, not a movie. So how much of Onnit do you feel like, when you were building it, was there a part of you that was like, God is telling me to do this, he's guiding me through this? Or was it like the non-woo-woo side of you now, just the business side of you? Like, what do you feel like it was?
No,
I had
very little faith.
Okay,
certainly I can see the divine hand in hindsight always with me. Like, and to me, it's a she, you know, because I'm in the Kabbalist lineage. So the best name for the God that I understand, I mean, there's many different names, but I like using Shekinah.
Oh, wow.
Shekinah, which is the emanation. It's more like a warm version of the Tao.
Like Shakira?
Yeah, Shekinah.
Just like that.
Is Shakira God?
Hips don't lie.
Or hips don't lie. There's no doubt
I like
about
that you use the she. Okay, that's great.
So
I knew God was a woman.
Yeah, I can see her divine influence in the connections and in the inspiration. Like when she's with me, that's when I'm magical. When I'm at my most irresistible, and like I think about my first meeting with Joe Rogan, for example, who is, you know, my partner in the business. And,
who is that? I don't know who that is. Never heard of him.
There was a time.
Oh, he's that guy with the little podcast.
There was a time when people were like, the Fear Factor guy?
The guy who ate worms? Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, the Fear Factor guy. But I could see how like she was with me, of course, you know, but nonetheless, like, I know the choices that I made. I had a coffee meeting with Joe to potentially talk about advertising on his podcast, which is how I set up the meeting. Or I got to go to the Kentucky Derby with Bodie Miller in his prime and have the craziest party of my life. Yeah. And I was like, sorry, Bodie, I can't go. I got this coffee meeting with Joe. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Reschedule. Come to the fucking Derby with me. We're gonna tear it up.
Yeah. Now he's like, good call, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, that was a moment where I made a choice to pay a sacrifice, and I do believe that was my choice. But nonetheless, like, I can see how, you know, how the hidden hand, the whispers were with me. But through the whole building of Onnit, one of my biggest regrets is that pretty much every day I woke up and was like, well, it's been fun, but I'm sure next week some lawsuit's going to come or something's going to happen and it's all going to get fucked up. I'm going to lose it all. And I think that type of vigilance is probably common with a CEO who's always looking for the next threat around it, so it wasn't exactly like it wasn't exactly full of faith. I wasn't like one of those people who are like, I know that I'm on the path and the force is with me. I was like, I feel fucking real blessed here and I don't want to fuck it up.
How many years did you have on it before you sold?
Started in really 2011 and sold in 2021. The official founding was 2010, so 11 years.
And how many employees?
It's like 140 when we sold it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have any other advice of things that you kind of wish you did or didn't do, or just honestly lessons you learned? We're a few years into our company in somewhat similar space, but and we started another business that ended up failing a few years back and learned so much from that. So
you got to learn from those, yeah.
Amen, right? So super curious now, since you're pretty much out of the day-to-day and everything. Are there certain things fundamentally on the business side that you would have done differently, and thinking of that in the lens of like entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah. I actually did a podcast with my CEO, Jason Havey, and it was like 23 lessons for a conscious entrepreneur.
Awesome.
And we go through a lot of the lessons. But if I was going to condense that, and I'd encourage you guys to listen to it because it's very, very specific, because me and our current CEO, we were in the trenches together from the start. Like, he built his way. He was up from VP of operations all the way eventually to replacing me as CEO in 2020, and then ultimately going through with the sale in 2021. So he's a fucking legend, Jason Havey. So we talk about a lot of lessons, but if I was going to condense it, one of the things that would have really accelerated our growth would have been to focus on our flagships rather than continually create new shit. I loved creating new shit, and I think it was also part of the allure. So it was good for our brand in a certain way. It was like, fuck, Onnit's always coming out with new shit. I'm like, we can sell honey from killer bees. And where they're like,
shiny object syndrome.
Yeah.
She needs to hear this.
Yeah, totally.
No, I always say to Mike, we actually need less SKUs. Double down on what's already working. But it's hard because
he's looking at you like, really
like,
now?
Let's do this.
But
really
also,
now?
as a creative, I love newness and novelty. And
of course.
who doesn't want a new fun SKU? So it's hard.
Yeah.
You want both.
Yeah.
Were those hero SKUs of yours, should you focus more on them because they were more profitable, they had better margin necessarily, or that was just the flagship product, so let's double down on that? More ad dollars, more time, more energy towards that.
I think it's a combination of all of it. I mean, they're your flagships for a reason, right? They're your flagships because they're meeting a need that people really want, and you're doing it really excellently. So Alpha Brain was our flagship. 6 years after launching, we develop an instant version where it's a pack, and then like another 4 years later, then we have like RTDs and finally have like a new upgraded formula, like a top shelf. But in the meantime, we created a billion other things. Mm-hmm. But what we found was that the biggest growth was when we actually started doubling down, making more form factors, more iterations of the same thing because of also the brand equity that Alpha Brain had created, and just the amount of customers that were already into it and be like, oh yeah, that'd be cool to have a ready to drink version and I can just throw it in my bag. Or like, oh yeah, these packets are a lot easier to travel with than a bottle of pills, or I don't like pills anymore. So that was probably, if I was going to talk about one thing that would have impacted business in kind of the most productive way and accelerated our growth, it would have been to really focus on fully expanding our flagships rather than continually making new shit.
That's great advice and good to know, especially, for us, there's always shiny object syndrome. We have a lot of different SKUs, but sleep is our number one category. So for us, we're starting to focus now on different modalities, different delivery mechanisms rather for similar sleep formulas, and we found a lot of success in that. But yeah, once again, it's very difficult. It's always like, like you said, we could do this, we could do that, but it's like that's going to take time, energy, resources, and let's focus on the thing that got us here.
Yeah.
The fundamentals.
Yep.
I'm curious if you were super healthy and health conscious while you were building it, because I envision you as somebody who was always still taking care of your health, Like when you were in the heat of it, like I want people who are like really want to know what it looks like. Cause I think a lot of people think it's glamorous and it's sexy, and Mike's the CEO of Soul and he works his ass off all day long. And I think that people assume that CEOs, just on Instagram, like the perfect little picture, like, oh, I'm living my life and not really working. So did you, like at the heat of it, were you taking care of your health? Were you waking up and doing cold plunges, or were you just like your face was in a computer or you were on meetings? Like, I want to know what it really looked like to build on it.
No, I mean, that was part of what kept my sanity, was the working out and was the taking care of myself. I mean, because I wanted to live, not only did I want to perform well physically, but I also wanted to party. I also wanted to, so I really lived the Onnit life. But part of what the Onnit life is coming up with ways to cover your ass for the places where you're really pushing too hard, like how to support your nervous system and adrenals when you've been pushing too hard, how to support the recovery of your body when you're not giving yourself enough sleep. Like a lot of it was compensatory by nature, so that was also kind of how it was built. So, but I always walked the walk. And that's one thing I also, was different about Onnit is like Onnit, I was on it through to the bone. Like you keep peeling back layers from the integrity to the performance to everything was real all the way through. And I've definitely seen CEOs of other health companies and you're like, really? Yeah. Like, you sure?
They're not healthy. Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah. Was there a transition for you after you stepped down as CEO or even after you sold to where you're like, okay, now what? Or a sense of like my identity is completely shifted, or like I had that when I retired from sports, for instance. So I'm always curious with people when they kind of like switch careers or a trajectory.
Yeah.
What do you do now? No. What do your days look like now?
I think because I'd concurrently had a podcast that was separate from Onnit, and I had a writing career that was separate, and I had a kind of Aubrey Marcus was its own brand that was always separate and also connected to Onnit, but separate enough that it was actually really seamless, and I'm, I've done enough work in the medicine space to hold identity lightly. I mean, I think Aubrey's awesome. I really do. I think I'm a big fan of Aubrey. I think he's great.
He seems cool so far.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
I'm into it.
Appreciate that. I'm a big fan.
I'm a big fan.
However, like I'm not just Aubrey. I know that. Like I've experienced the part of me that is unborn and undying, and I know that too. So I know that I'm gonna hang Aubrey on the rack. Hopefully, maybe it's in the rafters like a championship banner. The Aubrey goes to the Hall of Fame. Like that's what I'm looking for. But I understand that it's just a jersey. Like Aubrey's a jersey, and like the player carries on far beyond the jersey, and that's also what I know. So these aspects of identity are not that ingrained. However, let's say for whatever reason I became physically incapacitated. Ooh, that would be tough, because I say this all about my identity in the unborn and the undying, but what happens if I couldn't use my body in a really assertive way? That would be tough. That would be real tough for me. And, I just pray that that's not the path that the universe has for me to learn, because I have plenty of paths to learn, but that would be very difficult, and I have a lot of admiration and respect for people who've learned through that path. But that is a big part of my identity. Like I don't really, even though I know that this body is temporary, it is so interwoven with my own identity as Aubrey that it would be very difficult to separate those two without a massive identity death shift. But switching from CEO to not CEO, that was a cakewalk.
Cool.
That's powerful how you have so much flexibility in that. That's such a beautiful example of not holding on to identities like it's your permanent thing. Like not having permanency is actually really powerful. And I know Mike, that's been a huge struggle for him, is like, top of his game. And so many athletes deal with this. They're like depressed after their career, because who are they without that? And to be able to say, I can be so many different things. There's so many other chapters to come. The best is yet to come. And that sounds cheesy, but you almost have to embody that was not the best. It's like the guys who still are like, remember college football? And you're like, dude, you're 50.
Yeah, but
come on, Brian. Like life, you know?
I understand what you're saying.
Right?
I think it's a healthy thing to tell people.
Yeah.
However, like I just went to Green Bay to watch my buddy Aaron Rodgers play a home game in Green Bay for the Packers, 80,000 fans. And they are throbbing with excitement, all together in unison, waving white towels. And when he does something, the whole place erupts, right? Like,
he's the GOAT.
how the fuck do you replace that? I mean, psychedelics, I guess, but like,
I don't know. But the optimist to me is like, you have to figure out something next.
But
because
it's not possible.
Like,
it's not
so you
possible.
You just have to accept it's not possible.
I've never had that experience.
Like,
but that type of energy is like, or if you're Joe Rogan and you're selling out a I mean, he might do that forever, but you're selling out a whole arena and making 30,000 people laugh at the same time.
The drug.
That energy that you're participating in, or a rock star or whatever, like, what the fuck? How do you even ever imagine replacing that? That's like an interesting question.
You don't. I'm glad you said that because, and I'm not Aaron Rodgers by any means, but I fought Madison Square Garden and Cowboy Stadium, big fights, 20,000 people. It's the best fucking drug in the world. That adrenaline rush. And all these people tell you, like, find something else. And I just haven't. I don't believe I ever will. So it's almost like being cool with, okay, which took some time. I'm never going to get that. That's fine.
Yeah.
So just start to, like, be okay with that.
I guess I meant gratitude and acceptance of that chapter and honoring it. It was beautiful, but now for some people like Golden Tate, who we interviewed, Mike's good friend, it's now parenthood. He's obsessed with being a dad. So it's like, you got to believe that you have to, not that same level of dopamine, because you're never gonna get that same dopamine hit, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, but when you pull Golden aside and you're like, yo, when you won the Super Bowl, what was that like? He's like,
no, he doesn't, you could tell he's over it. I don't know. Maybe it's acceptance.
He's not over it. I mean, he loves his
All
kids.
right, never mind. You're fucked then. The rest of your life, you're fucked.
Yeah, thank you.
I think you have to convince yourself of a lot of things, and I think there are things that can replace purpose. I think you have to replace your purpose. That's very important. But I think actually the advice is grieve. Like, actually grieve. Like, it's like something died. Yeah. And the only way to do it is to actually go through the grief process and actually take that seriously. I think that's something that we undervalue in our world is grief. It's like, let's say your brother passes away, right? And like, you gotta fucking grieve. You gotta really like grieve because he ain't coming back, and there's nothing that will replace it. And in the grief of that, you let it go, and then something else can emerge. And that's my advice to, I mean, an athlete like yourself, or be my advice to Aaron when he's done, is like, okay, like go through the old way, the old grief way, like the wailing, the singing of the songs, go through that and like let it go, send it down a river, like fucking let that go, and then open yourself up to what else is next in life. And there are countless unimaginably beautiful but different experiences. But like, I think it's a tricky thing because that thing will never be replaced.
What do you think Aaron thinks about this? You've obviously talked about it as his friend. Have you ever said, yo, bro, you going to grieve after this or what?
Well, obviously, I don't know if you listened to our interview, but he kind of opened up about his medicine journey. Yeah. And, him stepping into the medicine path, you get access to states of consciousness that rival those different states. They're very different, of course, but they rival the amplitude of those other states of consciousness. So I think for the first time for him, he's like, oh shit. Like I can find states of consciousness in myself that rival the states of consciousness that I get when I have 80,000 throbbing fans, fucking pulsing with excitement. Yeah. And I think that's been really helpful for him looking forward to like what the future holds, is like what the medicine path can provide. Also, a side note, one of the coolest things I saw was, I don't know if you guys saw this, but he throws a touchdown pass to Lazard, and Lazard is, I would say probably his top receiver this year. Sammy Watkins is also really good, but whatever. Lazard just came back for his first game, and in the end zone, he grabs the football, holds it like an ayahuasca bottle, and all the other players come up and holding their hands like an ayahuasca cup. And he has a post online. I go to Alan Lazard on his post, and his caption is that Lambo tea just hits different. And then so he's pouring the ayahuasca. People drink it, and then they fall on their back. And so they did like an ayahuasca touchdown celebration.
Wow! Of course, you noticed that.
I was like,
right away.
wow,
that's dope.
We're in a new timeline right here.
You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's
ayahuasca
really beautiful.
touchdown celebration.
That's the best response I've heard, because even just being his sister, and I love Mike so much, and being there for him through that, but I can't, heal that completely in him. It's like, well, what's the next thing? And but it's like, no, fucking grieve. It's a version of yourself that you loved. It was a chapter of your life that you fucking loved. He deserves to grieve about it, cry, scream, whatever he wants to do. And maybe sometimes that is the best advice: is give people permission to just fucking cry it out. Some man tears and just let it out.
Don't try to tell him like, oh, you'll find it in something else. You won't. It'd be like saying like it'd be the disrespect of like, oh, your brother died, you'll find another brother. You know what I mean? You would never say that. You'd never be like,
to just honor it.
It's a good analogy.
Be like, no.
Yeah.
Like, just grieve.
Yeah.
You mentioned a word earlier, purpose. I'm curious now what you feel like your purpose is. Like, what are you excited about now moving forward?
What's next?
What's interesting is I've encountered a kind of a lineage transmission from Rabbi Gaffney, whose access, and I think I've referenced this as well, but the King Solomon lineage, so the lineage from Judah to David to Solomon, went kind of underground, reawakened by Rabbi Lurica, Mordecai Leiner, and then Gaffney's kind of resurrected it. And in many ways, he's transmitting that lineage through me. And it's unbelievably eye-opening and powerful. And so it's a kind of ironic full circle moment where I didn't even really think about this till this interview. But I started in high school believing I was going to tear down all religion. And now I'm in a place where I'm in a position to potentially revive it in a really substantive, holistic, spiritual way, where it's showing people the pathway to what I believe to be the true divine, also linked to the ancient Abrahamic lineage of which Christianity, Islam, and Judaism all sprung from, but I think has been misinterpreted. So coming from the destroyer of religion to one of the champions of religion, it's a very interesting way in which my life path has gone. But that is probably the most interesting. That's the most interesting thing that's on the horizon. And, also I'm continually evolving my spiritual capability and potential. And I don't know where that ends up. I know I'm able to reach states of consciousness that I only dreamed about, in my past. And what if I'm able to not only reach those states of consciousness, but stick the landing? What is that like?
Comes full circle.
I love that answer. Most founders, it's like, I'm going to start another company. And you're like, no, I'm about to be a shaman.
Yeah, totally.
You didn't talk about your essential oils MLM that you're starting, dude.
Do you want to be a dad? Do you guys want kids?
Yeah. We're going to go. So we met. Thank you.
Get your son doing some crazy shit at 18. Man. Son, going in the backyard. We're doing ayahuasca.
Lots of initiations.
When he's 5.
I met my wife, Vylana, at Burning Man in 2016. We got together in 2020. Burning Man was canceled because of the pandemic. And so we went to our first Burning Man together this year.
Oh, that's
and
great. Wow.
Our plan was we're going to go to 2 Burning Mans together before we have kids. And so we're going to go to one more and actually start trying like right after Burning Man.
And then you're going to be those people who bring their kids to Burning Man.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, those people who bring like their little babies.
For sure.
And
then also like a full time nanny setup in another RV.
Yeah.
The bougie way. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
The bougie rich spiritual way. Like, all right, go to the nanny now.
100%.
That's exciting. Wow.
The nanny's also a shaman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? This is the plan.
Yeah, Vylana's awesome. I think that's so cool that it all just like, guys, if you're listening, go listen to all of his episodes on polyamory because they're just like mind blowing. I remember in like 2016? I remember listening to these when I was living in LA and I'd be driving down the street and I'm like, holy shit, this guy's a genius. I should just have like 8 boyfriends. And you just get so into it. You're like, yeah, I could figure this out. This is smart. And then
I thought I could too.
Then by the end, you're like, wait, shit, this would get complicated.
It got hella complicated.
On paper, it works. but it doesn't work not on paper long term. So I think it's beautiful now that you guys are in this awesome.
Listen,
awesome
all I can say
union.
about polyamory is it's incredibly intoxicating and exciting, but unbelievably difficult. And I don't know a person that's. I mean, there's tons of people who can make it work, but I consider myself, if there's a type of person who has the type of relationships, skills, practices, consciousness that could have made it work, I would put myself in that category.
Would have been you.
And I couldn't.
Yeah.
And I couldn't. It was too much for me. It got the best of me.
Yeah.
Like I went toe to toe with polyamory, and polyamory won. Ultimately, I wasn't able to rise to that level of consciousness that I was okay with my sweetheart, having sex and falling in love with other men. I tried every way to make it work. And even though I knew that I could have sex and fall in love with other women and still love her, but I couldn't make it work. It was too deeply ingrained. And I think maybe for a time where consciousness is different, and it's kind of culturally supported in a different way, and you grow up with a different idea, maybe it's possible. And all mad respect to those people making it work. And I have nothing but admiration just out of my own humility that I got from that path. I'm grateful that I did it, though. I mean, to imagine being jealous now in my union with Vylana, it's absurd.
Yeah.
Whatever. You want to wear that? Whatever. You're not gonna have anal with this fucking dude you met? Cool. Anything short of that, I'm Gucci.
Yeah.
Whatever you want,
Monogamy is hard, though. I always joke and say I feel like polyamory would be easier, even though it wouldn't be. But the joke is when you're with one person, you got to face your shit every day. It's your mirror. It's your you got to work through that and choose that, where you can't escape and be like, okay, I'm gonna go hang out with Brian now or Steve. No, it's you. It's you that I chose. So, monogamy is hard too, in a way, right? It's all lessons.
It's like a Cold War versus a firefight. I mean, let's be real. It's not. Yeah, it's got its challenges. I'm not saying, but it's one, you're stockpiling tanks and you might fight.
Yeah.
The other one is fucking missiles.
I like that you admit that, though, because there's people out there who think that it was just they just go around and have sex with people every day. And
no, fuck that.
It's fun and it's a party. It's no, they're actually having these conscious conversations about it, and it's a whole thing. It probably took up so much of your time and energy.
Absolutely.
You're every day figuring out shit. Where's she? Okay, and then her. And
all
then
the time.
Full-time job.
All the time.
Having one
I'm
wife's
trying
enough.
to suss out if does she like him more than me, or and then they're all figuring out does he like her more than me, or he took her to Uchi and took me to Commodore. Oh, sushi is better than Mexican. He must love her. I was no, I don't know. I just didn't want to eat sushi twice. What do you want from me?
That's so much energy.
But it was a lot.
Wow. This was awesome.
Yeah.
This was fun. You're always so intriguing to listen to. So this was so fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Where can everyone find you and learn more about all of these things that we covered
I
today?
I dropped a couple, references to the Aubrey Marcus Podcast, different episodes. That's a great place.
Yeah.
I have documentaries on YouTube, most of them on YouTube. So youtube.com/Aubrey Marcus Pod. I lost Aubrey Marcus in the bit of foolery. And then Instagram @Aubrey Marcus, website aubreymarcus.com that has the Awaken the Darkness documentary.
Awesome.
But yeah, I'm all over the place.
So good.
There we go.
Woo!
Let's start that MLM.
Let's start it.
Let's go.